So let's talk a little more about the convicted felon and disgusting sexual predator in the White House who is desperately trying to cover up what he did to children with his best friend Jeffrey Epstein. Now, the latest news on all this came out yesterday with the release of this Epstein birthday letter that Trump sent to his best friend for his 50th birthday. Now, as you'll recall, this letter that Trump sent him was part of a compilation of letters and notes and disgusting pictures and all kinds of sick crap that were sent to Epstein by, a bunch of his sicko buddies. And they were compiled into a book by, I believe, Ghislaine Maxwell and presented to Epstein for his 50th birthday. Now, that book has been turned over to Congress by lawyers for Epstein's estate. So now we know that this book and this letter written by and signed by Trump exists because, of course, Trump has been denying this. Now, we first learned about the existence of this letter back in July when the Wall Street Journal reported on it, and they included the image. Let's look at it real quick. They included this image. This is the letter. It's a hand-drawn outline of a female form, with writing on the insides. It's typewritten. It's this little back and forth, which we'll get to in a second. Then, and it's signed by Trump down around where the pubic area would be. Anyway, that was released by the Wall Street Journal back in July. Of course, Trump denied it all. Does what he always does when the truth is reported about him. He said it was a hoax, a witch hunt. This is the Wall Street Journal trying to destroy Trump. Of course, the Wall Street Journal is owned by Rupert Murdoch, the same guy who owns Fox News. The Wall Street Journal endorsed Donald Trump for president. I mean, it's ludicrous. So, of course, he lied about it. Claimed he didn't know anything about it, that if his signature's on it, that it must be a forgery. He said things like, I've never even drawn a picture in my life, which, of course, then all these pictures, hand-drawn pictures by Donald Trump surfaced, including hand-drawn and signed pictures by Donald Trump that were put up for auction. I mean, so it doesn't matter how brazenly he lies or how easily disproven the lie is. He's just going to lie, and the media will run with it. And that's the thing that irritates me about this coverage, is the media, as they always irritate me. Being all like, oh, so Donald Trump was lying? Donald Trump was lying when he said he didn't know anything? Of course Donald Trump was lying. That's what he does. How the hell are we like a decade into this? And because when this came out and he lied about it, then the media was like, well, we don't know what to report about this. The Wall Street Journal reports on it, but then Donald Trump denies it, so we don't know what's true. How about you just assume that Donald Trump is lying? Because he's always lying. Why do they continue to give him the benefit of the doubt? The default assumption should be that he is lying until he proves otherwise. But instead, it's still the other way around. That, well, we don't know, so we're not going to report on it as true. Look, there's not a chance in hell the Wall Street Journal would have reported about this letter if it wasn't true. I'm going to talk about that more in a minute. Anyway, so why don't we just go back to this letter real quick and read what this disgusting thing said. So inside the body of this woman, and really it's not a woman. Take a look at it. This is a child. Okay, look at the breasts. Do those look like the breasts of an adult woman or the barely visible breasts of a child? Okay, Donald Trump may not be the greatest artist in the world, but I got to tell you, he's not bad. I've seen some of those pictures. He draws better than I do. And, you don't have to be a great artist to draw a pair of big boobs, right? I mean, kids in grade school can draw big boobs. Now, if Donald Trump wanted to draw big boobs, I'm pretty sure he could have. Instead, he very specifically drew small breasts, like the breasts of a barely pubescent young girl. Right? So let's be honest about what this is. This is the outline, not of a woman, but of a child, a female child with newly forming breasts. Now, here's what it is written inside. It says voiceover. There must be more to life than having everything. Then Donald says, yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is. Then Jeffrey says, nor will I, since I also know what it is. Donald, we have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, yes, we do. Come to think of it. Donald, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you. Donald, a pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. Donald J. Trump. Now, what's strange about this sick letter is the use of this word enigma. Enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Like, what the hell does that mean? Now, at the time this letter came out, there was talk about the word gamine, Gamine, because gamine, a word which I honestly had never heard of before, is an anagram of the word enigma. And he says here, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? And of course, this is written inside the form of a young girl. And the word gamine is a French word, and it refers to a young girl, like a mischievous young girl, sort of meaning. And so isn't that strange? The strange use of the word enigma, which is an anagram of the word gamine, which means a mischievous young girl. Now, nobody really knows what the hell that means. My theory, and this is just a theory, and I'm not reporting this as fact, but my theory is this. This whole thing is like an inside joke, right? This is code, right? There's more meaning in here. I think we can agree on that, right? There's more meaning embedded in these words than are apparent to the rest of us. And that the only person intended to know the meaning is clearly Jeffrey Epstein. This is something between Trump and Epstein. Now, my thought is that use of the word enigma is intentional. He didn't just pull this word out of his ass. It means something. And Donald Trump doesn't use the word enigma anyway. He probably couldn't define enigma. He doesn't know what the hell that word means. What I think it is that, as I said, importantly, gamine is a French word. You know who's French? Ghislaine Maxwell. She would know this word. And so I'm thinking that this is an inside joke where enigma is intentionally an anagram. Have I been saying acronym? Because I almost just said acronym. Well, if I had, that was a mistake on my part. I meant anagram. Anyway, I think she knows the word gamine, and she introduced it to them and switched the letters around and used the word enigma as an inside joke between the three of them. Or maybe more people. I think this is an inside joke. I think it means gamine. I think it refers to young girls. That's what I think it means. If that's what it is, then it makes sense. If that's not what it is, then I don't know what the hell he's using the word enigma for. It doesn't make sense at all. But anyways, that's what I think. My theory. Okay, now let's return to the lies here. Because they all lied for him. And they do it every single freaking time. Everyone in right-wing media, members of Congress, all these people lied for Donald Trump. When he comes out and says, this is all a hoax, and I've never drawn a picture in my... They all repeat the same crap. I just heard one friggin' MAGA congressman this morning. They were playing a clip from what he said back in July. He's like, I just don't buy it. It just doesn't make any sense to me that Donald Trump would write anything like that. Or I don't know. I haven't known Donald Trump to draw anything. So the whole thing seems all made up to me. So now they all have egg on their face, but it doesn't matter. They don't pay any price for it. None of these right-wing media outlets pay any kind of price for constantly repeating Donald Trump's lies and lying on his behalf and covering for his fat orange criminal ass. There's never any price to pay. So it's not like this is gonna, and they don't care. And the people who watch them and read them and listen to them, they don't care either. They want them to lie on Donald Trump's behalf. In fact, they probably all knew that it was true when it was reported. I'm sure they did. Even the Trump voters, even people who watch Fox News. When they say it's all a hoax, do you really believe that they believe it's a hoax? No. They know it's true. They know what a scumbag he is, and they don't care. In fact, they like him more because he's a scumbag, because it makes them feel better about themselves for being scumbags. Anyway, so they lied about it. And of course, at the time when this was released by the Wall Street Journal, Donald Trump threatened to sue the Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch. And of course he did. He filed a lawsuit for, I don't remember the amounts, because for like 10 or 20 billion dollars, because that's what he always does. He sues people for 10 or 20 billion dollars. Friggin' ridiculous. And so now we know that lawsuit was completely frivolous. He claimed in his lawsuit that the Wall Street Journal just made this up, that it's not true, it's all a hoax, and they did it to hurt Donald Trump. Well, now we know that it's true. And so Trump does this all the time. He sues people to add credibility to his lie. So he says when some truthful information is reported about him, he says it's a lie. And as proof that it's a lie and it's a hoax, I'm going to file a lawsuit. And that gives credibility to his denials. But he does this all the time. And on issue after issue over the years, he has filed a lawsuit, and then months later, he just quietly dismisses it. Right? The lawsuit, when it's originally filed, gets all this attention, designed to bolster Trump's denials and give them credibility, and then months later, he just quietly dismisses them, and those dismissals are never covered by the media. Or, it'll just be a footnote somewhere, but it doesn't get the kind of attention that the original filing of the lawsuit gets, and that's as intended. Now, these friggin' lawyers, though, who filed this lawsuit and who file similar kinds of lawsuits, which are clearly frivolous, clearly filed just for politics, as I say, they have no merit, which is why they dismiss them later. These lawyers should be disbarred. You are not allowed to file frivolous lawsuits or to make claims are untrue. So to go into court and file a lawsuit claiming that this letter was a hoax when you know it was not a hoax, that's perpetrating a fraud on the court. You could be disbarred for that. These lawyers should be disbarred. And part of the reason we see this abuse of the legal system by Donald Trump is because he has lawyers who will do this on his behalf, and there are no consequences to the lawyers who do this. This is a real problem with the legal profession. Okay? They could put an end to a lot of this, but there's never any sanction. And when there is, even in the most egregious examples, like, for example, Sidney Powell. Remember her? She filed all those frivolous lawsuits on Trump's behalf over the 2020 election, and she was sued by Dominion, and she had ethics complaints lodged against her. I forget exactly the outcome, but I believe it was a slap on the wrist. She should be disbarred. She shouldn't be practicing law, and neither should the lawyers who filed this lawsuit if they knew that this was not true. And I don't think it's good enough to just say, well, my client lied to me. Lawyers have an obligation to do at least some research, some investigation into your client's claim before you file a lawsuit. You don't just say, "Oh, my client says this is false, so I'm gonna, so yeah, I'll run into court and file a lawsuit on your behalf." No, it needs to be more than that. When you are filing a lawsuit, you are, as a lawyer, you are telling the court that you have good faith reason to believe that the claims you make in your lawsuit are true. Anyway, but as I say, there's no way that the Wall Street Journal would ever have published this unless they knew this was true. And so it's the whole thing. We've known this was true from the beginning. And to hear the media now like, "Oh my God, Donald Trump," of course he was lying. Anyway, let's talk a little bit more about this sick book. So we know about Trump's disgusting letter, right? But there were so many other things in here. I've seen some of them. I just want to give you one example of the kind of crap that's in here. Here is Donald Trump's best buddy, Jeffrey Epstein. Let me see if I can shrink that down and move it. Okay, so there you go. There's a picture that was part of this birthday book. And there's Jeffrey Epstein. Luring on the left-hand side of your screen there with the balloons, luring little girls with balloons and candy. And there he is on the right side with those little girls. He has groomed them into being little, I guess, sex slaves. They're not performing any specific sex. Well, although the one near his crotch area, we don't know exactly what she's doing. In fact, she does look like she's performing a sex act, doesn't she? The other girls are just rubbing him down. You got one rubbing his feet. But that girl with J.E. on her ass, I don't know if you could tell that. There's a red heart on her ass. And the initials J.E., Jeffrey Epstein, tattooed on her ass. She does, in fact, look like she is performing a sexual act on Jeffrey Epstein. And, of course, there in the background is his mansion down there and on the island, and the Lolita Express, or whatever they called it, his plane that ferried all his sick pervert buddies to the island to, do what they did to these little girls. This is sick shit. This is sick stuff. And this book is full of this kind of crap. And let's just be clear. This is Donald Trump's best friend, or was Donald Trump's best friend. You don't think that Donald Trump was doing this exact stuff with Jeffrey Epstein? I sure as hell do. And that is why Donald Trump is so desperately trying to cover this up. Because all these things that Jeffrey Epstein did to kids, Donald Trump, I believe, did the same thing. That's why he is so desperate to cover this up. And there is literally, in my mind, nothing that he will not do to keep this from coming out, including starting wars, including using the military, ordering them to attack American citizens in Chicago, in Baltimore, wherever. Because, hey, the Supreme Court gave him immunity. And giving orders as commander-in-chief, hey, that's an official act. So, he can, according to John Roberts and the boys, he can order the military to go to war against the city of Chicago, to kill American citizens. Guess that's an official act. He's commander-in-chief. So why wouldn't he do that? Why wouldn't he? He doesn't care about killing people. We know that. Look at all the people who died during COVID. Look at people like Herman Cain. A Trump cultist, head up Trump's ass. He died because he went to one of Trump's little COVID rallies. And he didn't care how many people he killed, including his own supporters. He didn't care how many people died on January 6th. And we're lucky that a lot more people did not die on January 6th. As bad as it was, it could have been a lot worse. And Donald Trump was perfectly fine with that. Remember, the Secret Service wanted to stop a lot of his supporters from gaining entry to his speech there that day, that, incitement speech, because they were armed. And Trump said to them, no, take down those magnetometers. They may be armed, but they're not coming after me. Those weapons aren't for me. He knew what they were for. He knew that those weapons were to be used against members of Congress if need be, and he didn't care. He didn't care how many citizens got killed, how many members of Congress got killed. He doesn't care. So there's nothing he won't do to cover this up. There is absolutely nothing he won't do. Here, so see Jeffrey Epstein there? Getting a hand job there and getting his feet rubbed and all this sick shit. Picture that being Donald Trump. You know, in fact, if you pulled back on this picture, you know, if you pulled back and got a broader context of this picture, you'd probably see a lounge chair with Donald Trump laying right next to him. That's probably a scene that was reenacted many, many times on the island. And that is what Donald Trump is desperately trying to hide. Anyway, keep up the pressure. Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. And as much as we are outraged by the other things he's doing, and, you know, I wish we could ignore things like Trump using the military. He just hit my lamp there. Using the military against Chicago and things like that. We can't ignore those things. But we can't lose focus on Epstein. Donald Trump is a sick, perverted criminal, and he should be in prison for the rest of his life. Now, we might not ever see that come to pass, but we shouldn't give up on it either.